Welcome to the CRE82INSPIRE Podcast. I'm your host, Coriel, and wherever you are, I'm glad you are here. And today I'm very excited because I'm going to be speaking with a positive inspirator, a man on a mission, Marius Horn. Marius has been through many challenges in his life, and he's overcome, and through those, he has some gems about mindset, exercise, and living abroad that he can share with us today. So I'm super excited. So if those topics sound interesting to you, this is the place to be. And I don't believe in coincidences, so if you're ready to be inspired, grab a pad and pen, and let's begin. Marius, great to have you on the show, man. How are you doing, man?
Bro, first of all, man, it's a pleasure to really be on this show. I'm doing great. And actually, I'm getting into podcasting. It's taking a little bit of time to kind of adapt to being on camera and speaking, but it's exciting, man. I'm really looking forward to continuing this in the future.
Dude, I'm excited for you, man. Last time we talked, we were like, a lot can change in 1 year. That's one thing we said. And like just seeing how, much you've grown, you're working on stuff, you're starting your podcast. It's really cool to see, man. And so starting off, bro, like what are you up to, man? What's the plan? You said you're working on your podcast. I heard you're gonna be traveling soon. What's kind of the plan for right now, bro?
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, I graduated high school finally after 13 years. We're gonna get into why it's 13. 1 year I spent obviously in Texas is how we met, but doing a podcast was always kind of a passion of mine. And I contacted you last year. I said, might want to be on your podcast because I was impressed. But last year I wasn't really in a place where I could formulate my thoughts and have enough experience to really make an impact. This is now the case, I think. So really gonna get it going. Episodes recorded. Really, I'm traveling to Turkey to meet up with my guy who I'm doing the podcast with, Nikita. Really gonna get it going. So excited for that.
Dude, it's crazy. Just a little bit of our backstory, how we met. We both went to the same high school, but we weren't there at the same time. It was during quarantine. I was home recording the podcast, starting my podcast up, and you were in school. And we met, I think we met at a track meet or something like that for the first time when I visited. And I was like, there's something about this guy. Dude, I'm just so happy that we finally connected and we're able to do this. And I look forward to I'm happy for this moment and the moments we're going to have, man. So just starting off, bro. So you live in Germany. You're from Germany. You live in Berlin, right? But then you moved to Spring, Texas. So how is living abroad, especially like within your high school career, how has that influenced, your mindset? That's what we want to talk about today, right? Your mindset in your worldview. How is moving at that age and experiencing a whole new world, really, how does that influence you?
Well, I'll tell you this, it's a whole different environment that you're subjected to. I grew up in a very atheistic environment with people not really believing in this concept of God, and especially not this spiritual sort. Like I grew up and I'm still in this environment of, this complete opposite of what it was going to Texas. So going to Texas and to your school and to this environment with being in a Christian family really came with a lot of adversity for me because you were challenged on almost every view I've had.
Dude, yeah.
Over the course of that year. More importantly, though, and what I think was the bigger change and the bigger challenge for me was going back because you adapt. And I'll be honest with you right now, I think Texas is a fantastic place to be. I still am in touch with a lot of the people there, with my host family, with teachers, even after 3 years via whatever, WhatsApp, texting. But going back was really the time when I realized, okay, I'm gonna need to sit down, have a conversation with myself on how I approach life, because going back, because you adopt things, right? I adopted a certain mindset when I came to Texas, right? And you're subjected to your environment there, to the people there. You come back and it's completely different, right?
I'm curious about the idea of mindset and our environment, because what I've learned is that what I've experienced is that, okay, I might be in this environment, right? But how can I apply this certain mindset to this particular environment? There's also times where the environment we're in can also shape and also influence our mindset as well. For example, I kind of see our mindset as a filter and then the world around us as a feed. And something that you've built along the way in your journey is resilience. How have you, we can get into the story a little bit later, but how have you gotten to the filter that you have? How would you describe the filter one, how do you see the world? How do you strive to see the world even when there's feed coming towards you?
I'll say almost everything is relative. To point this out, as I've said before, I think there are certain truths about the world and certain truths about mindset, no matter where you are, that are going to have an impact on how you live and how you don't live. There's this saying that says you're the sum of the five people you spend the most time with. I think that is absolutely true. So it just depends on who you surround yourself with when you're in that particular environment. Do you surround yourself with people who, for example, go to the gym or not? You'll end up being influenced in some sort of way. Do you surround yourself by people who are all atheists? You're going to be influenced in some sort of way. I just think over the years of me really being in contention with these things, I develop things like, okay, I know now what I'm going to do, how I'm going to behave, no matter where I'm going to be in. So I'm pretty much going to be all right wherever I go, because now I now have the perspectives of saying, okay, I went into three completely different environments. One to Texas, one back to Germany, and now I'm on the verge of really going into the world and traveling a little bit, so seeing all this. But you realize, you come to a foundation after a while of being challenged, and that foundation doesn't really go away no matter where you go. Resilience is what you talked about in your question. I think resilience is built through adversity. Adversity builds character. I always talk about this, adversity, but what is that? It's being challenged, one, by your environment, and two, by challenging yourself. So we're going to get into this a little bit later. I work out a lot, and I work out to an extent where most people wouldn't want to work out, but that's okay, because I think I'm doing it for this. I'm doing it for my mindset, and it's really helped me over the last 3 years to train at that level, to be able to say, okay, I might be nervous here, or I might not know how the situation is going to go, but I know what I've done.
Yeah.
So both working out and both being challenged and knowing where I've been, that goes into all of this. So I'm pretty sure now, like wherever I am, whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to be pretty fine, right? Like this podcast, I might be a little bit nervous coming on here because I don't know what I'm going to say. Is it going to sound good? And yet I still know, okay, you've been through 3 years of challenge every day. You've challenged yourself in so many different ways. So really, this shouldn't be an issue,
So
right?
it's the ability to look back and see what we have done in order to say, okay, I can do this too. So now I really want to have the time to dive into your story. We talked a little bit on the phone last week, but just looking back for you, what are the challenges that you faced that have gotten you to the point today where you're at with exercise, where you're at with mindset? Let's get into that, man.
Well, to start this off, I think in any situation, there's two ways someone can go about it. One is much easier, but doesn't lead to necessarily you being content after a couple of years. One is much harder, and it leads to you feeling good about yourself once you've done it. So for about 4 years of my early teenage years, I was very depressed. I was in a dark, dark place in my mind. I was 95 pounds when I was 15 years old, very shy, didn't know how to speak. Didn't know how to speak English. Two, didn't know how to speak to people. I get nervous when I spoke in front of 3 or more people because heart rate goes up, you sweat and all this stuff. Very insecure kid, addicted to all sorts of things. And, at one point being suicidal and all this, but you get through this and time passes and I was still depressed. And I'll remember this date until I die, probably because it was so impactful. On October 16th, 2019, I watch YouTube as I always do. I scroll mindlessly for 12 hours a day through YouTube videos because I'm bored. One video comes up from a guy who I consider to be one of the most inspirational people I've ever seen, David Goggins. Now, you probably know this man,
Yep.
right?
Heard of him. I've heard of him.
For those of you who don't know, Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, known for being one of the toughest men on the planet, runs 100-mile races on 8 consecutive weekends, which is crazy. So I look at this video, and the first thing that's being said is you're gonna die never even knowing about your full potential. And it hit me like a brick. And it's crazy. And I think about this, I watch this video and I go and look at myself in the mirror. This kid, 15 years old, 95 pounds, lying, insecure. And I just say, you just list off all the things that I fail at. Oh, I'm 95, I'm underweight. I'm not good socially. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to be charismatic. I don't know how to do all these things. List them off. And I say, I'm going to have to attack one of those to get started. So it wasn't for me was physical fitness, right? And David Goggins, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I was looking up David Goggins. So what does he do? Well, runs 100 miles, a little bit too much for me. Runs, does 4,030 pull-ups in 17 hours, a little bit too much for me at the time. But he says he's not a superhero. So I say, oh, if he's not a superhero, then I can do what he does. I look up a video of him doing 1,000 push-ups in 1 hour, 17 push-ups a minute for 60 minutes. And I say at 15 years old, if this guy is for real, I'm gonna be able to do that too. So I get up my orange yoga mat, go downstairs, and at 95 pounds, pump out 1,000 push-ups in 1 hour. And what happens was it's a huge mindset shift that happened. And you're thinking, oh, okay, this guy ain't, this guy's serious. So what I'm doing can actually make an impact. So ever since then, I've been training pretty much every day, and not to the extent where I'm doing 4 sets of 12, but really going after the mind. And it's fantastic. I think that's the best way to train. And it's really built me up and really got me out of this depressive state, which is just through hard work, because I thought I was down here, everyone was up here. So I need to outwork everyone else to even have a chance to be equal. And this is what I did for the past 4 years, and it's worked. I'm really happy now to have this perspective to look back on it and say, wow.
Dude, one thing that really pointed out what you just said was that with the story, it's a great story, by the way, just having that moment for yourself to be able to look back on and say, this is what I've overcome. This was that moment. This is that paradigm shift people say, right? You saw David Goggins. You were inspired by David Goggins. You saw him do this, and he said, I'm human too. So that's the first thing. I think a lot of people misunderstand the fact that we think that we may not be worthy of something. As in, this person maybe be able to do it, but I can't do it. But when he said that, I'm not a superhero, it shows you that all of us have the potential to do something, right? To do that thing that we want to do. So you saw him, and then after you saw him say that, you're like, okay, I'm going to try it too. That's that competitive spirit in you, man, which I love. And then you did the action, and then from that created another thought of, okay, if I can do this, then I can do that. Then I can do this, then I can do that. So it creates a feedback loop, right, that you're able to just continually grow in and achieve more and more along the way. Bro, so I know you described the story. A lot of people might have that feeling of, dang, I'm in this rut. I'm in this depressed state. Like, how do I get to that next step of actually getting out of that state? What were the things that you did? We talked about the story with David Goggins, but what's kind of the mental game that, as like you described, that you've discovered through your journey?
Well, I think there's, and this is actually something I only realized recently, but this can be applied towards any situation. I think there's problems that you focus on, and there's only a certain amount of problems the mind can focus on at the same time. So you want to put problems in your mind that you attack and they go away. I think a lot of the things that keep people permanently depressed is because their mind is dealing with too many problems that no matter what that person does, they won't go away. So I will not get political, but let's say you talk about a problem that affects the world.
Yeah.
So no matter what that person does, the world is still it's not gonna change. That problem does not go away. What actually makes the sensation of progress, in my mind, is if you solve problems, then you can focus on something else. So in terms of me, I realized I was, you're focusing on all these different things that really do not matter and don't go away, and there's still problems in your head no matter what you do. And you can put the ideological stuff towards that. You can put anything that's bigger than what your current actions are affecting. So what I did was, you focus on physical fitness.
So if you attack physical fitness every day, that problem now goes away. You're now able to focus on something else because your mind knows, oh, I'm dealing with this. Or if I'm learning English, oh, I don't learn English, problem. I'm teaching myself English every single day, listening to whatever, movies. I used to listen to wrestling all the time. steel chair, all of this. You start to learn words that way. So this is how you learn English, but the problem goes away. If I focus on something that's worldwide and I try my best, that problem will not go away. And if you occupy your mind with enough of these things, you will in turn be disgruntled or unhappy or frustrated against the world. And you see this. I saw this a lot, again, going back home to Germany. You see this because a lot of these people are focused on things that they can't control. And if you can't control something and it bothers you, it's not really a good thing to focus on. If you focus on too many of these things, you're going to end up in a negative state of mind.
Yeah, so it's an idea of what can we actually control, right? And like when you talked about we have so many different problems we're getting in, I started thinking about like social media, us concerned about problems that aren't even our own problems.
Absolutely. And social media is big in this, man. Like I turn on Twitter or Instagram, you always see these things and you're thinking, man, like I'm not in the US. Why do I do want to know about the state of the world. I should focus on, okay, well, what can I do to improve today? And this is the most important thing. Another thing, right? Everyone I think knows what they should be improving. Everyone knows. A lot of people don't want to face it because in facing it, there's pain and adversity and challenge and getting up at 5 and putting your running shoes on and going running. Like this, it's hard. So you need to accept these things and be honest.
Honesty, that's another thing. It's the honesty. And I think we distract ourselves, all this information, all these stories, and we like to be distracted by those so we don't deal with our own sometimes.
Absolutely.
That's what I've definitely realized that I've seen whenever I'm at a low state. It's because I'm worrying about problems. Well, it's okay. It's not a worried state. It's more of a depleted state, a numb state, where you don't feel pain, but it feels numb because you're dealing with things that aren't. At least for me, I realize you're dealing with things that aren't like your actual problems. When I'm dealing with my actual problems, that's when you feel. That's when you feel and it hurts. That's when you grow from that and are able to have an enlightenment or something you learn new that you can then create into your own life in the way that you live. And the thing is, the only thing that we can control, right, is our actions and our mindset. So those are the two things that we can focus on. So if we can focus on those problems that we see with those and let go of the problems that, not that we don't care about those, but we should focus on controlling what we can control. And I really like that analogy for you just described. So thinking of a quote, my dad always says this, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. And so I want to ask you, what do you think is a misunderstanding that people have about mindset, or misunderstanding that you might have had before you've transitioned to where you are now?
I think that quote is interesting. If it was easy, everyone would do it. It's interesting because at some point it does become, I guess, easy, because at some point you go through enough where you say, I won't ever change this. Like I work out every day. That probably won't ever change unless I get horribly injured or something. So at some point, it does become easy. But before that, it's very hard. It's very difficult to actually get to that. Everyone can do it. I 100% think everyone can be a top 1% athlete or top 1% thinker or whatever, or it can be the top of their field if they so choose. The problem is it's very hard when you first start off. It's very hard because you have to develop all these habits that just aren't in place. Like for me, I used to be, and it's still like that sometimes. I used to be very against, I was never disciplined. I was never someone that says, oh, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. And with fitness, it was really the first time where I said, I really don't like the pull-up bar in my room. I really don't like it, but man, you got to do it. You got to do it regardless of what you feel like. So, and for example, like with running, I started to really get into it a couple of months ago. Let's say like 10 weeks ago, I think, May the 5th. And I hated it. I hate running. I despise it. You run and it's long, you get out of breath. It's crap. It's hot, you don't have anything to drink. I started running, and I remember putting an Instagram story up. I hate running. Solution: run more. So I run and run, and 2 weeks later, I ran like 15 miles on one at once. And this is just, it's all about this. And I think once you have unlocked how to challenge yourself and how to go way past whatever boundaries you think you have, it becomes, I guess, it becomes simple. Because running, I hate it, but you get to a point where you say, I know I can run 20 if I want to. I know I can run 30 if I want to, because you're just in that
Yeah.
place where you say, oh, I've proven this so many times to myself. You know, last Wednesday I did 1,000 pull-ups. I don't want to, harp on myself too much. It's just about challenging the mind. Once you do it enough, you'll realize that really it's not that hard to do. Right? That's what I'm thinking. But you got to get there, and that's what's hard.
It's funny because the point of mindset is to get out of your own mind.
I
The point
suppose.
of mindset is to get out of our own mind and move, right?
I suppose it
The
is.
point of the
Because the mind is the strongest enemy you'll ever have, because it shows up on time every time. So it's always there, and you have these two sides. And I said this before, right? You have the side that if you run, it says, "Man, you're tired. Well, look at this, man. Who's out here, bro? Like, you don't have any drinks. Well, what are you doing? You're on the road. It's 30 degrees Celsius outside, the sun. You don't have, all this." And then you have the other side that says, "Are you gonna keep on going or what?" I mean, you have both of these things, and who you choose to listen to is going to determine your future. I do believe that. And you have this in anything, right? Do I want to work today? Do I want to do I want to be nice to people? Do I want to have a good day, bad day? It's all you decide. So why not decide for the one that's hard right now, that you're going to say, but in a year of time, keeping at it, you're going to be so far ahead of the competition. It's not even funny.
pays off. Hard work pays off. And not even just hard work, but smart work pays off.
Consistency beats talent every time.
Consistency beats talent every time. Wow, man, that's what you said. What you just said there is a lesson that I've been learning a lot. Because, bro, just to be open with you, I started to focus once I graduated. I got so focused on my talent and that, wow, I had achieved this. I'd done this. I still had that mindset of I've done this, but it wasn't like, oh, I can also do this. It was, I've achieved this. I did this. But now I did that. But that right there, that's that same mentality of being satisfied in a way that doesn't propel us even further, right? And to say that, what I've learned, I want to see if you agree with this mindset, is that, for you, the physical outcome, flex my guns a little bit. The physical outcome wasn't the goal. It was the mindset growth, right? Like, that was the thing, and the physical comes from that. So a lot of times, it's not just the goal, like the outcome, but it's the journey towards the outcome as well. That's in turn, that's our whole life. It doesn't end. There's never a point where it's success. It's a constantly succeeding every day, so you can have what's called, what you would say for yourself and others say for yourself, is a successful life. It's a daily decision, and, right? So what are your thoughts on that, man?
I agree with exactly what you just said. I think you can't ever rest on your laurels as well. I can't just say, oh, because I have done it once, I am now, I'm great now. No, you're not, bro. Like, every day you got to get out there, and you got to do what you don't want. It doesn't go away. But I agree with what you said.
A lot of us, especially in our generation, we get caught up in short-term pleasure, right? So we only think of we tend to think of this short gratification, right? And it's training our minds to detach from that, right? And say, okay, no, this is something that I can do in the long term. And long term takes consistency and hard work, not just talent. When I think of what we just said, right? I wanted to ask you, so what does it look like for you? We've talked about exercise. We've talked about all the other things like running as well. But from a way you operate just on a daily basis, what does it look like for you in a day, let's say, to have a successful day? What does that mean for you?
I think a successful day is your time used to the best of your abilities. So spend time on what you know is right, and don't spend time on what you know is wrong. So obviously I'm only human, so I can't maximize 100% of my time, but I can maximize about 75% of it pretty well. So you'll say, okay, you get up, you work out, whatever you want to do, breakfast, nice, get some work done. Then whatever, hang out with some friends, like have some downtime as well. When it comes down to it, never make excuses for why you can't do what you don't want to do. I think that's a big part.
Never make excuses for not doing what you don't want to do.
So like, even if I never want to work out, I say this a lot, you know, I do know it gets easier once you started, but I'm probably motivated for 25% of the workout that I'm doing. So the other 75% is just because I say to myself, oh, you know, you got to do it today, man. Otherwise you lost. So that's what you do. And, you know, don't spend time with people that drag you down. Don't spend time with people that doubt you all the time and want to argue with you. It's hard, of course, if if you're down on your luck and you're really in this position right now, you're set, but you can still eliminate this. And again, you know, I think a successful day is living to the best of your abilities and going to bed knowing that you've done your best that day. So even now, it's a little bit of a dark attitude, but I think I'm at a point now where even if it would all come to an end tomorrow, I could say, you know what? I would have loved 50 more years, but I'm okay with what I've done. I'm okay. And, you know, you're putting, like, I put maximum effort in every day. And this is what leads to me, becoming what I'm supposed to be. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But having this peace of mind, because something I always used to do is, man, I would put off everything. I would be a massive procrastinator. So I would say, oh, I got schoolwork. God, I got to do this right now. It's due in 2 days. You know, I got this other thing. Oh, it's not due right now. I don't have to do it. So when the evening before comes, you're like, oh, now I got all of this lined up. And that would suck. So now I had to train myself to kind of get out of this, but it's really good. It, like, as I said, I don't know if I said this before, like the satisfaction you get from something like this, from discipline, is infinite times the satisfaction you get of slacking.
Yeah, so true, man. So true. If there's someone listening to this podcast right now who might be in that place where they're like, okay, I feel a little stuck, like, you've already given so much advice, like you've already given so many gems throughout this whole thing, and I feel like if anyone just even listened to 1 minute of our conversation, they'll have something to write down and reflect on for themselves. But if there's anything you could tell them right now, someone listening to this podcast, listening to Create to Inspire right now, what would you tell them on this topic we've discussed today?
Be absolutely honest with yourself and attack everything that you know of yourself not being adequate enough. So set your own standards. You know what your own standards are. You know where your shortcomings are. Attack those areas that you want to and need to attack, and do it every single day. And you'll be at a great place in 1 year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Speaking from experience, bro. Just always, when I think of life, right? The name of this show is Create to Inspire, and I believe that all of us, we all are creatives of our own life. As in, we have everything we need. The world is at our hands, right? The world we have everything we need around us, right? But it's the ability to creatively put things together, even in our minds and also in the world, to put things together to create the life that we want to live, right? And that takes discipline. That takes self-control. That takes what else does it take? Honesty, like you said. And I wanted to ask you, in that light of creating this life that we want to live, what does the phrase "create to inspire" mean to you?
Well, for me, obviously, I can answer this pretty simply if I say, oh, I have a podcast, so I'm creating this podcast to inspire. But I think it's a little bit more than that. I think it's, again, looking at every day and how people look at you, how your family looks at you, because creating doesn't necessarily mean you have to create something digitally. You have to create a sheet of paper or whatever, you write something on it. No, creating, I think, means living in a way that can be can be something that people look at. So when I see Goggins, I mean, he writes books, fine, okay, but the main thing that I get from him is that he's daily running. He's running every single day. He's getting after it every single day. And that inspires me. And that's not necessarily something that he does in a creative way, but he lives it. Does that make sense? He lives his life to inspire others.
Marius, it has been a pleasure having you on the show, man. So your podcast is coming up. I'm super excited. You said you have a friend of yours, Nikita, who's helping you build this podcast. Can you kind of give us a little bit of introduction of what this podcast is, the vision for it, and everything like that?
Okay, so the Podcast is a podcast that he and I have conceived in our minds and have recorded now 2 episodes for it. These are it's in development right now, obviously, but I'm very confident then that before this podcast goes up, we're going to have everything set and the episodes are going to be released. The plan for it is to take it as far as it can possibly go, with obviously the work ethic that needs to be in it, and to have a voice out there, especially of a little bit younger guys, to people out there that say, oh, I'm looking for something. And I think the message that I bring, the message that he brings, is, I think, a very positive one, and one that people would like to hear. And that's something I always want to do. I think it's a lot of people are focused now on the wrong thing, which is, doing something for financial gain, doing something for whatever profit, or to make it into a great business. I think the more important thing is, how many people do you actually help with this? And I think bringing this podcast up, and especially being on other podcasts like yours, it's been a pleasure, gets you to a point where you can say, oh, you've inspired people, you've made people's lives better. And that's really what I want to have in the future. And that would be more satisfaction for me than anything else.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Hey, listeners, be sure I'll link Marius' Instagram and social media and everything, so that you guys can be able to see when the podcast drops. And so you can be inspired and see his story, see my guy do his push-up, his pull-ups. He wasn't joking. I've seen it myself. He's doing this thing. Marius, you're super inspiring. Thank you so much for hopping on the show. Dude. And also for the listeners watching, if there's anything in here that stuck out to you, be sure to note it down. Writers, people who write down what they've seen or heard, those are the people who are really going to digest what's been spoken or what they've received. So be sure to do that and share this podcast with a friend. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode of Marius. Create to inspire. Peace.